Hello and welcome to the Engerati studio here at Africa Utility Week, and I'm joined now by Paul Hinks, who's here in two guises, I suppose, the CEO of Symbion, and also the chairman of the Corporate Council on Africa. Paul, firstly, welcome. Thank you for making the time, and you've just finished chairing a CEO forum as well, so you've got a busy schedule. When we were talking off air, one of the things that was interesting was about the involvement of the US in Africa and some of the things that are happening with the US getting involved in Africa and around the energy side of things. But you know more about that than I do, so can you just give us a bit of an update on what's happening on that side?
Yeah, well, first of all, the US has always been involved in Africa. US aid has played a big role. Over recent years, US has played a massive role in HIV initiatives. But right now what's happening is the US is turning its attention to other things, things such as trade, energy, and last year, President Obama, he set out his strategy for sub-Saharan Africa in June of 2012. And then, of course, towards the end of the year, he got quite busy.
Yes.
And probably didn't focus too much on that. But then what I know from my own interactions with the government is that in recent months, they've been working towards developing that strategy with the different government agencies so that they can play quite a big role in these sectors in the African market. So I think what you will see is in the next few months, you'll see a move towards the United States playing this larger role. A lot of people think it's because they're trying to counter the effect of the Chinese, which is absolutely untrue. Yep. It's nothing to do with the Chinese, but I think the US believes that it can add great value through these various government agencies and through the US private sector in specific things which they're going to focus on.
And what are those specific things?
Well, I believe this is something that will be announced in the not too distant future, I'm sure. But I believe that the attention will be paid towards trade with Africa and perhaps the energy sector. In fact, I'm fairly sure it will be the energy sector. The exact details of that are still to be announced.
And what do you think? And it's been a common thread throughout the interviews. There are two things that are coming through. There's a real desire to try and paint a clear roadmap for energy in Africa. So because demand is increasing. The second one is the role that renewables can play within that, and that's coming through clear as a desire. Again, I think it can't all be all renewables because they've got their. Where do you see some of the opportunity in terms of resolving those challenges?
Well, I think that what the US is going to be focused on is transactions in making things happen. One of the major problems about the power deficit in Africa, or one of the major causes of it, is that enough projects, enough megawatts have not been brought online fast enough each year. So there have been studies done that have showed that Africa is not even keeping up with normal growth, let alone accelerated growth and high GDP growth, which you've seen in places like Ghana, Tanzania, Rwanda, Nigeria. So, and then you have the situation where you have a place like Nigeria, where they have an available capacity of 4,000 megawatts and an installed capacity of 6,000 megawatts, and yet they have 160 million people. whereas Tanzania has an installed capacity of 1,500 megawatts, and they have 45 million people. So you've got huge requirements in electricity right the way across the continent, and in almost all cases they don't have enough power to service themselves at the moment, let alone these ideas of exporting power to other countries. So there's going to be a major input, but I think that there are lots of problems. Some of this came up in the CEO forum we had earlier, that the donors believe that there's a lack of capacity in the utilities, in the ministries, in various African countries, and they would like to help. The utilities think that the donors come along and have their own agendas and make conditions, and they don't even get together and make the conditions. They come with each of their own. Yeah. And the African utilities also feel that the donors sometimes have their own favourites to do the work. Yeah. So there's a lot of issues there that have got to be solved in order to make these transactions actually happen. And on the independent power basis and private power, I think there's an inherent mistrust of the private sector. I think that came over loud and clear when we were that there have been, in the past there have been private companies who haven't done things in the right way, and that's left a bad taste in people's mouths. So yeah, there's a lot that needs to be done.
Is that mistrust in the private sector based on because there are all sorts of other issues that hinder investment, like guarantees on returns and that side of things. Is there a way of cutting the Gordian knot? Because what you've described sounds like almost like a diplomatic mission that needs to be undertaken.
Yeah, and I think that people realise that. I think that the big attention right now, I personally believe, has to be focused on transactional. It has to, power plants have to be built, transmission lines have to be built, interconnections have to be built. So unless these things get done, Africa is going to fall further and further behind as we go forward.
And the building of the power plants and things like that, do you see that? And it came out in one of the other things, and you may take issue with it because you might say, well, actually, there's too many local problems before we get there. But one of the things that came out is people saying that actually there's an argument for looking at Africa in terms of having a bigger grid as well, because you can generate better in certain areas and then transmit it down. A parallel like in China, where the hydro is generated in the north. I want to say pump, but that's the wrong word. But transmitted down to the south, where the consumption happens. Do you think that is just way too early here in terms of thinking like that?
I think people have been thinking like that in the 30 years that I've been doing business in Africa. A little bit longer, actually, 33 years. I've been doing business in Africa. People have been talking about these African grids and great power plants such as Inga. But that's 30 years I know of they've been talking about it. Right. Nothing much has happened yet. Yeah. There's a fundamental problem in this whole idea of transporting power around the place. Currently, with the installed capacity that there is, each of the countries that could do it, each of the countries that are in the regions, they don't have enough power themselves. So if they don't have enough power themselves, how are they going to export it to anybody else?
True.
And I think, despite the political issues and bureaucratic issues, etc., the reason that none of these interconnections have happened and this big grid system for Africa hasn't happened is exactly that. There isn't enough power in each of these places in the first place. If there were huge power plants like Kabura Bassa that could generate electricity and send it, as it does, to South Africa, right across the continent, well, it would be a different story. These things are starting to happen now. Ethiopia is developing a lot of hydropower, cheap hydropower, which it's intending to transport across borders into other countries, like Kenya, Sudan. So things are happening finally. Yeah. But as I say, it's. I mean, I hear about Inga all the time. Inga. Mostly when I come to South Africa, or you're involved with the African group, but not many people really believe that Inga's going to happen. So let's hope it does.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose sometimes you just need to actually solve the small problems before you can. And do that in the right way and join the dots up. We're coming to the end of our time here in the studio, and I have to ask you this question because we are at African Utility Week, and if I could turn you into a reporter for a second, and if you were to say, right, okay, this was a takeaway from me being at the event, this was something sort of positive that I heard, or I'm still disappointed that we're talking about that. What would you say?
I think I was very enlightened by the CEO forum that we've just had. We had it under Chatham House rules, so I don't want to talk too much about what we were discussing, but it was enlightening in terms of how the utility managers, the challenges they face every day in order to operate the systems and develop the systems, dealing with politicians, etc. So I think, you know, the takeaway for me is actually not a lot has changed in Africa over the years. But what I see is that in electricity terms, but what I see is the possibility that it is going to change. I also see a serious intent on the part of the US government, who we know. And it's great to see so much US involvement and people here from the US who've got an interest in doing business in Africa, because the US has been woefully absent. Over decades. Well,
and that seems to be coming through with all the interviews, that there seems to be this energy and actually a sense that this time it sounds like the little synapses are sort of firing all in the right areas.
I personally believe, because we're heavily invested in Africa now. We have Symbion has a power plant in Nigeria, partnership with a great company called Transcorp. We have 3 power plants in Tanzania. We've just acquired a company in South Africa. So, I mean, that's the vote of confidence I've got in Africa, is that we've.
You wouldn't be doing that.
We wouldn't be doing any of that if we didn't believe that there was a lot for us to be doing in the future and a lot of business to be undertaken. So, I'm very positive about it. It's a shame that a lot more hasn't happened in the past, but I think we're, as you put it, we're just at the turning point right now.
Well, that's a great note to leave this interview on, and thank you again, Paul, and thank you for watching. And as you know, on Engerati, a lot of the presentations, in fact nearly all the presentations that happened at this event and the many others that we run, are available for you to watch on demand. And there's a network of about 11,000 of your peers, so you can make connections throughout the year and hopefully enjoy sort of more productive events like this. And thank you for watching.